today we won't do any founders, no demos this time. We will have a few investors instead. The main reason is I didn't want to do I didn't want to do 1 hour of talking about how amazing Europe is, and then you pull a poor founder in front of everybody and be like, okay, prove me right with your work in progress hack that you did last weekend. I felt this was a little bit unfair to anybody. So instead today it's only investors. It's 2 friends of mine, both quite experienced on each the topic, and I want to like to talk a little bit with them. So today we have a few special topics. So number 1, acceleration in Europe. Like what's wrong, what's right, and how can we fix this continent? As always, highly participatory. I would love if you join the chat. It's on rfc.to. And I also have like this time a few quizzes and everything. Okay, so would be fun to have you on. Okay, let's see if this works. Okay, cool. So quick context, what I will do. Very high level, a few points, okay? Then I get like my first friend on. We talk a little bit about specifically deep tech in Europe. And then I would like to explain with another friend of mine from the point of view of an investor why Europe is like a fucking shit show when it comes to investing, okay? And you feel free to quote me on this, okay? I like, honestly, put that on my grave. Okay, let's start. Europe, okay? First up, there will be a little bit of like smack talking here, which I have to do because some of it is unfortunately true. But I'm a very proud European. I think of myself as European first, Austrian second, and I may think third, obviously. But our continent needs to wake up, okay? We have a little bit of an issue here, and this is like also the topic of today. Let me actually see if I can do this like this. Yeah, that's nicer, perfect. We have real problems in Europe, okay? This is a chart that has been quoted a few times comparing the stock between the US and Europe. There's a nitpick here. There's like a lot of stuff you can say about inflation, and there's like whole articles. My POV on that personally is if you nitpick charts, you're like already like in a bad place. The general vibe is here, and the general vibe is something that a lot of people would agree with. The main problem we have in Europe, as everybody here knows, is we lack tech. It feels to me we almost like slept on the whole Web 2.0 on everything of the last 10 years, whereas the US like was extremely strong here, okay? This post went viral a few days ago actually. I think it's like a week, maybe, something like that. And David makes, like, in my opinion, like perfectly summarized this. Like we have no Google, no Amazon, no Meta, no Apple. And each of these companies is pretty much the size of, I think, our top 5 or top 10 companies combined, right? The ESA is like nowhere close to where SpaceX obviously is. We have no NVIDIA, although we're supplying them with ASML, like with all the components. And also my personal pet peeve, instead of like standardizing the European Union, or like even productizing like India does with the digital public infrastructure, as we discussed like 1 or 2 weeks ago. Instead of that, it feels to me like more like we are like regulating. And when I ask to speak with policymakers, people ask me like, do I want to speak with somebody who's working on the AI Act or somebody who works on the what was the other one? Digital Service Market or something like this Act, or the other one was something else, you know? And that's none of the things that I actually care about as a startup founder / investor, right? It feels almost like we're missing the big moment, and additionally we are also like kind of like focusing a little bit on the wrong things. I'm not like going into here now like on nuclear, Russia, defense tech, and like 50 other things that are like worth discussing. So what is the root cause for this? Okay, chat, like what do you think is the root cause for the fact that Europe is lagging? Let me know. What do you think? This is a test today. Half the chat is European. I want to like hear what you think. Like what is the root cause for this? This is like a test today. Like you came into class and now you're getting tests. What do you think is the root cause for this? I'm waiting until somebody replies. And while somebody gets brave enough, let me actually test something else. Nice. Okay, so what do we have so far? Regulation, okay. Complacency. Too many minions. On Twitter, Mike is saying too many levels of bureaucracy. Government focus on only of the needs of big companies. We're trying to, oh my, that's based. We focus too much on trying to force our utopian trip on everybody using regulation and laws to force it. Okay. We aren't united in my opinion, a lot more individual histories and cultures. Okay. Missing drive. Jesus Christ. Over-regulation mentality. The business culture is far too focused on capturing state guaranteed sources of income. Lack of urgency. Okay, we need to cool down now. This is like the goal of this stream is like to be Euro positive. They've managed to deploy billions of dollars in innovation and all of it goes to summer projects. Hey, I hope you don't mean this summer project here. You capture our value add. Nice. Europeans feel like they have too much to lose and like freaking GDPR. Okay, I personally don't think it's any of those. I think a lot of that is actually memes. Okay, I think a lot of that is memes that we are starting to believe from the US. To me personally, the main problem we have in Europe is the fact that it's like a fragmented market and that Europe, the European Union, if you actually look closely, isn't as much of a united economic zone as you would imagine. Almost like all tax treaties are bilateral, like there's very few European-wide things. So if you do business, you basically fight from market to market. And like one thing I always tell founders is it's really, really hard to expand to like a second, third market. Like unless you're like purely online product. If your third country is in the US, you're doing something fundamentally wrong. Nice. Okay, few high-risk investments. Most rich people invest in safe assets like property. One of our problems is that we have great beaches. It's hard to harmonize and unite 27 nations with individual egotism, history, and domestic politics. Yes, unfortunately true. People in the European Union just really don't have strong determinative vision of the future, don't want to disrupt existing economic order, and so on and so on and so on. So my main point is that I'm here with Johnny, right? Like I agree what Johnny's saying here. We are actually a pretty amazing continent. And the problem we have is actually that we have a few things that we need to get done, okay? And we are going to like basically fix all of that this summer. This is at least my goal. Stretch goal, we might fix, I don't know, the whole planet. Let's see, okay? Okay. A lot of the stuff that we are saying, and also like that saying inside like in the chat now, is actually memes. It's stuff that's like popularized, but is in many cases not even that much true, you know. And like the goal of this stream today is actually to show like a few facts here. So for example, like Europeans don't work hard enough. I used to live in the US. I don't think this shit is true. Like if you look at official reports, it depends on the country, you know. The reality here is actually, in my opinion, so like there's like, come on, I can like throw charts at this forever, you know, but I'm not going to answer memes with facts, you know, like that's something a sane person would do. Instead, I want to like just like basically counter memes and general opinion with like my personal opinion, because that's the one that counts. I have been a lot in the US for the last few years. I lived there for multiple US. Like Americans like to talk about working hard. And I think it has to do with the fact that the moment you lose your job, you lose your insurance and something like that and your livelihood and everything. So maybe that's the reason. I don't know. But they really, really love talking about. The thing is, in reality, they don't work much harder. Like if you're in an average WeWork in San Francisco, 6 p.m. everybody's gone. As sad as this sounds, like I wish it wouldn't be true. And I'm not saying like founders don't work hard there. Like founders work hard everywhere. It's their freaking job to work hard. I'm saying it's not disproportionate. I can build easily a way more better team and like hardworking team in Europe than, for example, in San Francisco. Another one which I regularly hear is that Europe life is too comfortable. And again, like it kind of depends where you're based, right? Europe is big, and more importantly, I don't even believe that this whole story around hardship and perseverance is actually that like much true. In many cases, it comes out of this hero arc that like almost everybody does in the US when they present their own CV. Where they like tell you how they came from nothing and are now here. If you give the typical upbringing of like a, I don't know, Romanian founder from like 10 years ago to any Ivy grad in the US, they would give a TED talk that you would start crying in the end. Like honestly, they're just like really good at storytelling. And a lot of this is like so ingrained into the culture. And we're not used to doing that. More importantly, I don't think it's even like a criteria. Like if hardship would be one of the factors that matter to get like good investments, this shit wouldn't happen. It wouldn't be that like all the big investments are going to Stanford grads, another Ivy League, it's, yeah. So other one, the taxes are too high, and this was also like in the chat. I don't believe that. I honestly don't believe that. If you want to optimize for taxes in Europe, you can do that. I tried to make a chart here. It's like not really like easy to read, but basically, if you want, you get away with like 10, 15, 20% taxes in Europe. If this would be an argument, if this would be something people are actually pushing for, everybody would move to those countries in Europe, right? Like this isn't the main argument. This isn't the main problem. And I'm not saying that taxes are like perfect here. Don't get me wrong. Like huge issue, obviously for many, but that's not the root issue. The risk mentality is my main pet beef. It's kind of like as if mentality is something that doesn't exist in a system. Like as if mentality is something that just is genetic or something. That's not how this works, right? Like there's a reason for that. Let me switch the layout actually. But more importantly, I don't even believe it's that true. I think Europe is like one of the biggest sources of immigrant founders for the US. I think second one is India. And a fifth of all unicorn founders in the US are actually European. If risk awareness would be like averseness would like be genetic, like we wouldn't even have them, and you could argue it's like self-selection to go to the States and everything. I don't believe that, so yeah. The real root cause is like as many people in the chat said is fragmentation, at least from my point of view. This is the big issue we have here. There's like a really, really good post here on Reddit from 2 years ago that basically just summarizes the POV on the consumer market. He's like Danish and he explains how like in the 80s, he used Danish software like DSI, which already had like support for Danish grammar and Danish spelling and everything. And he used Pascal and so on and so on. And those companies just couldn't keep up with the acceleration that American companies had, who had like a several 100 million population consumer market. And that kind of acceleration, that kind of early pull is like something really, really important to many companies. When we did Product Hunt, I honestly swear to God, every day we fracked something up, and we still every day had so much pull. There was like always like something coming up. Like if you have actual market pull, this changes everything. And to find market pull in a population of like 5 million or 200 million is like a huge difference. We have almost no shared media. We have almost no shared consumer market. This is a huge problem on the consumer side. I'm not saying I'm going to fix this. Okay, I'm not. Maybe somebody in the chat is going to fix this. It's not going to be me this time. Yeah, and so on and so on. Okay, but this stream is not about complaining about Europe. Okay. This stream is about showing like a few realities. Okay. Because I think one of the big things we have to actually do is we have to change the narrative. We have to change how Europe is perceived. Because by now, there's like two problems with the memes. One is they're fundamentally wrong on many levels. And the other one is that they're fundamentally true. Okay. So 1 second. Okay, cool. So we have two problems with the memes. Number one is that they're fundamentally wrong, and what's even worse is that they're actually true in many cases. Okay, Europe doesn't have the technical innovation that we need. We are very, very, very much known for quality of life. We are known for a premium life standard, at least Western Europe. You know, like people keep forgetting that. It's not like all of Europe. But that premium lifestyle comes from premium jobs. That comes from the fact that we have companies that are producing things that are worth the people's time that are in there. Okay. But we need to change the other part of the narrative, like the memes that just make fun of it, because there's so much things we can actually be proud of. Okay. And this is like what we need in Europe, like as like a change of narrative. And I'm the worst for this. Okay. Honestly, like I'm Austrian, like we rent by default. Okay. Like if Austrians, like especially Viennese people, if they don't complain for more than 5 minutes, you know, they get like nervous and everything. So I'm the worst person to talk positive about anything. Okay. But like still, this is important. We need to celebrate European excellence. Okay. And we are honestly the last generation who might be able to do this. We're the last generation who can fix the European Union. And because, okay, let's just said I want to say much more nice stuff, you know, but like there's the Austrian again. We are at the point where I talk to young founders like early 20s in Europe who are having projects that are perfectly placed. They have the local network, they have the talent locally, everything. They still think that they need to move to the US to actually start it. Not to move to the US when they get big enough. They think they need to move to the US already before they have even started to have even a chance. And that's a downward spiral. That needs to stop, that needs to change, okay? They grew up with all these memes, you know, and in many cases, Twitter is like very much focused on American POV of everything. We need to actually show the facts about Europe, okay? Because we have all the parts. We have the tech talent, we have the founders of ambition, we have the research, you know? We just need to get the baseline to work to remove a little bit of the friction so that entrepreneurs can actually really, really, really accelerate here. So let me check. Okay, so let's actually do this quickly, okay? So I want to show like a few here, and then afterwards we show a few more. Number one, we have like world-class universities, and we'll go into this a bit later because we have like a whole segment on this. But European research is among the best in the world, okay? A lot of the stuff that you perceive to be AI innovation is actually coming from Europe. We got the people. This is like something that a lot of people don't know. We have actually more talent moving to Europe than leaving, and this is like almost like to me like almost like a narrative violation, or it's called anything like that. We are also extremely liberal when it comes to business, which is surprising to any. You know, European countries are like highest ranks on those factors. We are also way more optimistic about AI than anybody else in the world, which is also like, you would assume that Europe, with like all the GDPR, all the AI regulations, actually very defensive and like very negative about AI. It's a complete opposite. If you ask people on the street, we are very, very optimistic of AI. And maybe like GDPR, and this is like a hot take, maybe like GDPR in a few years from now, we'll look back at the AI regulation and be like, wasn't like perfect, but wasn't like not a bad idea, you know, so TBD on that. Another one is we are actually known for having the highest business founder per capita in the world, in many European cities, which is also something that people just don't realize. Europe, like, and again, any stat, any chart, you can nitpick the hell out of it, okay? This is not, you know, but on the other hand, that's the same what like a lot of the memes in the US are doing, okay? We have multiple cities with the highest business founders per capita in the world. And we have like multiple other stats like that. We have the biggest, we're known for extreme economic freedom and so on and so on and so on, okay? And like a ton more, okay? What I want to do now is I actually, because I'm not an expert for a lot of this stuff, okay? I'm an investor who invests in companies globally. I'm an investor who invests in companies globally. I have like more than 100 investments and only like 20 to 30 of them are actually in Europe, okay? I wanted to get somebody on who's an investor who has experience in Europe and is actually focusing on, what's the term? Deep tech, okay? Because I honestly believe that with every technological revolution, there's a whole chance for like a generation to change the playbook. Wait a second. Okay. There's a whole chance for generation to change the whole market in the playbook. We have this right now with AI. We have this right now with robotics. We have soon in multiple other areas. Okay. Now I want to get on Sam. I wanted to get on Sam for this to talk a little bit about deep tech. The reason why I want to talk about deep tech is two reasons. Number one, it's hip with investors. And number two, and when I say hip with investors, I don't want to discredit, but like I know VC funds who invested in GIF apps, who invested in meme apps, and now all of a sudden do defense tech, okay? Since 2021, a lot of investors are kind of like, oh, we need to actually invest in serious things, okay? There's a bunch of those investors who have done this since ages, who have done this already before. Sam is one of them. And we are actually good in it. We have Paris, London, and Munich. We have the Nordics. Like we're really, really good in multiple aspects here. So let's get on Sam. 1 second, Sam, give me 1 minute. I'm just like putting on, by the way, if you wonder if Sam is a good investor, his name is literally Sam Cash. And I think I made this joke 500 times by now. And I think everybody else also. And you must be like really, really annoyed with this joke at this point. But anyway.
I was going to say, it's your live stream. You can make whatever jokes you want. Am I on? Can you?
Yes, everybody can hear you.
Oh, amazing. Hello. Nice to be on. Nice to be hosting in front of so many of you. I can't see the chat, so Andreas.
Yes.
If there's anything that pops up, maybe just.
Yes. Multiple people already started insulting you.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Let's look for more of the same. Well, guys, great to be on. Andreas very kindly invited me on just to give you a bit of a whirlwind tour of what's going on in European deep tech. Maybe for a bit of background on me. So I'm a mechanical engineer turned venture investor. I've been investing in venture for nearly a decade now, so since 2015. Recently at a firm called Project A Ventures, which is Berlin-based seed Series A. And led on a lot of frontier technology investing. More recently, I started my own firm called Entropy. For the engineers in the room, you will instinctively know what Entropy is. And we do pre-seed, seed across Europe and to a lesser extent in the US in technology companies who are building in critical industries. So everything from energy, supply chain, defense, but also semiconductors and more complex AI type companies. So maybe just to kick off, I guess I'm going to talk about a few different things. Just one kind of a bit of an overview on what is going on in Europe in terms of deep tech. Number two, a bit on talent. So Andreas alluded to this fact, but just kind of just to give you a bit of a sense of the academic institutions, what kind of engineering, scientific talent they're pumping out.
Yeah.
And then just a bit on a few of the emerging hubs. So fragmentation, I think, has kind of probably been the most topical word so far
Yes.
in this session. And that has clear ramifications on a lot of deep tech and a lot of the talent clusters themselves. And then lastly, I'll concentrate on, as ever, this is going to be a positive presentation and going to exude a lot of the facts of why we're very good at engineering and science. But of course, there are things to improve. So we'll just go through a couple of those very quickly. And if there's any questions, just feel free to shoot. Andreas, you might have to flag those to me.
Sam,
Please bear in mind, Andreas,
shall I
I can't see the slides.
Yes, I will quickly share the slides on Zoom so that you see them as well. And then I pipe them through Zoom, through my screen share, through my other virtual camera to my OBS. From that, I pipe it to Restream, and from there, I pipe it to IRC2 to the live stream. Okay?
Amazing. That's the real European deep tech, is your live streaming setup.
Okay, let's do this. Screen share. And let's
I can start kind of in parallel as well.
Give me one second. I think I have them on. Okay, cool. So to repeat, overview of academia, we want to go into some of the hubs, and we want to additionally look into successful companies, and afterwards I want to talk a little bit what I can improve. Okay?
Yeah, let's do it. That sounds good. Maybe just to kick off, Europe has a really, really deep history of pioneering a lot of technologies, and I don't just mean in modern day, but if we go as far back as the invention of the light bulb, the first mechanical computer with Charles Babbage, the science of computers. So computer science was really invented by Alan Turing during World War II, to more recently, I guess, in the 80s, the invention of the World Wide Web with Tim Berners-Lee. These are all, very fundamental technologies, all of which most of the industries that the people on this call care about or build in, those technologies are really, really fundamental. We also have a bunch of, really big global leaders. You've already mentioned ASML. So ASML make the lithography machines, highly complex machines, 400,000 parts within each one of these things. And those things actually make the semiconductors for NVIDIA, or for Tesla, or for other companies. We also have really strong funding. So we have over €1 billion of public money supporting research, as well as funding a lot of the early companies at the early stages and at later stages as well. Programs like Horizon Europe, EIF, BIPI France, ARIA in the UK, and more recently, a bunch of really, really big seismic subsidy packages. So Net Zero Industry Act, Green Plan, etc. So a lot of underlying capital that is available to entrepreneurs at all stages to build these big, deep technologies. And in regards to kind of a few of those sectors and subsidy packages, I think specifically in energy, industrial, AI, and a bunch of sort of adjacencies, we're actually really, really strong in. But let me get to that.
Yeah.
Maybe to start with talent. So,
one second. Let's do it the other way around. We do a game which I call Pitch Deck Karaoke. Okay, I throw random slides that I prepared, and you tell me, you basically try to pretend that you have seen them before, and we see how this goes. Okay, because I want to first start with the academia, and I want to keep something on the slides, because I don't know about you, but pretty much everybody in my audience has ADHD as frag, and they can't pay attention unless I change the screen. I was originally considering to have a Mind Runner on the side or something like this, but this is going a little bit too far and might change your hurt your brand. But let's jump into slides, okay? So number one, what did I fuck up now? Play slideshow. Okay. So number one, universities. This is something that a lot of people seem to keep forgetting. And now with deep tech, the importance of universities coming back. What's your POV on this?
So maybe just to go even one level up, I think a trope that is a really accurate trope is that talent really is the lifeblood of all technology companies. And I think this, when you are an investor or a company builder, becomes particularly true. You sense which geographies, which cities, which countries really have strong engineering talent. And we can go into a bunch of examples, but Europe, however you cut it, whether you look at computer science, engineering, or STEM, we have 5 or 6 of the top 20 universities globally in each of those fields. So universities like Oxford, Cambridge, UCL, Imperial, ETH Zurich, TUM, and then a bunch of other really very strong universities. TU Delft is very, very good at physics. Places called NUTN in Norway and a bunch of other places. So
Max
really,
Planck,
really,
Max Planck, and most importantly, obviously, Technical University of Vienna, where I'm from, which
yes,
like for some reason always gets forgotten in these lists, which is I can only assume due to corruption. But yeah.
but also
Yep.
maybe just to expand on that, so these are really, really strong universities. These are universities that have quite literally been teaching a lot of these the antecedents of a lot of these subjects for decades, if not hundreds of years.
Yes.
The UK, for example, we sort of came up with the Industrial Revolution. So there's a huge depth of mechanical engineering talent in that country that has been refined over decades and decades and decades.
Yes.
So there's really, really strong institutions that have been around for hundreds of years and will be around for hundreds of years. And then maybe sort of more precisely, and I suspect this might be your next slide, if you look at the percentage of STEM graduates in Europe,
nice.
It is much, much higher. So this is on a per capita basis, but if you do on a comparative basis or absolute basis, it is higher in Europe. So, on average, 80% of graduates in the US are STEM, whereas Germany is basically twice that amount. And, you can say similar about Spain, Italy, UK, and France.
This is actually something I want to get to in a second. We think of America as a developer hub, as like a STEM hub or something like this, which is like completely wrong. But the problem is we're so used to thinking of, like, nobody's thinking of Europe as like one number. Everybody's thinking of Europe as like, you only hear like the stats of individual countries. And on all of these stats, we're like always like far behind unless you look at it relatively or something, right? But if you look at the full amount, we are like actually a STEM headquarter, which I'll get to in a second. More importantly, also like a lot of those areas are known for like fundamental research, right?
Yes. So again, really very, very strong fundamental research. A lot of that strength actually comes because of public funding. So if you use somewhere like ETH Zurich as an example, so ETH Zurich is particularly strong at robotics and to a lesser extent AI as well, but very good at computer vision. And they've had a bunch of very big and well-known successes. If you take ETH as an example, one of the reasons why they have succeeded in terms of having a lot of both research from a lot of their master students, postdocs, etc., but also a lot of those companies effectively spinning out into standalone successes is because they have a depth of public funding that gives the talent, the ability to build, the ability to research for numerous years with relative safety. More concretely, if you look at the number of publications that Europe pushes out, it's 15% higher on a per capita basis than the US. So again, going back to one of those memes, we produce more scientific papers than the US. Now, of course, there is maybe a question as scientific papers is not equal entrepreneurial success. So clearly between scientific paper and large scale company, something is going on. Maybe that's a topic to explore.
This is also like one thing that people think of, like when you talk about like scientific paper as like, great, I can put it in my shelf, I can throw it away. What else am I going to do with paper, right? But this is not like what scientific research means nowadays. Like, for example, Stable Diffusion was made in Europe. I'm not talking about like stability, which is like from the UK. I'm specifically talking about the research. Stable Diffusion is like, as far as I at least know, is from Germany. And we keep forgetting that because we see this stuff afterwards online. We see this stuff like run very frequently through American companies and so on and so on. But the actual output, the actual research output is very frequently from Europe. you know, and that's like something I think we need to be way more aware of. Like we need to be actually aware of the excellence we have here.
Yeah, and maybe to expand on that, I mean, there's lots of amazing examples of this. You know, if you look at ETH Zurich, which I just mentioned, Climeworks is out of there, which is probably the biggest direct air capture company. Also, Anybotics. So Anybotics is a really cool company. They do effectively autonomous robot dogs. And they can use those quadruped dogs to do things like industrial inspection. There are other well-known examples. You know, DeepMind effectively came out of UCL, the comp sci department there. Oxford Nanopore, no prizes for guessing, came out of Oxford. But there are many, many, many examples of really big, successful companies spinning out of these academic institutions.
Yeah. Let's quickly jump a bit more. This is like a point I had before. Like we are actually a hub for development, for software development, and we don't think of us that way because we're so used to thinking of us like very fragmented. We have more developers in Europe than in the US. And it's a significant amount of developers compared to the whole global population, you know? We are not used to us thinking of as like Europe as a whole as a developer hub. Like we know that there's like a lot of good software developers here, blah, blah, blah. But I don't know, at least when I speak to a lot of founders, it's not like top of mind that Europe is a software development hub. You know what I mean? And a lot of this comes out of the academia. A lot of this comes because we have very good universities, because we have all of this kind of like baseline that is needed to make this happen. I will jump further. Let's talk about funding, okay? You are running a microfund around deep tech. For those who don't know, microfunds are actually essentially the startup equivalent in the VC world. So it's like a comparably small fund, usually run by 1 or 2 partners maximum. And very frequently, they cannot like rely on getting rich on management fees. They are not like, well, not like do any names that start with A and end with C. They cannot rely on like huge management fees to just like live comfortable. They actually have to bring returns and hopefully make their money through the carry. So what's your POV on VC investments in deep tech in Europe?
So I think historically it has... What's the best way of framing it? I think historically it has been relatively barren, if I'm honest. And I think that's the same in the US, by the way. So the way that technology works is most technologies go in waves. You know, if you go back to the 80s, it would have been the start of the PC era. The 90s would have been the start of the web era. And then things like, you know, server client side. And then more recently, we had obviously cloud and mobile. So really the last wave was cloud and mobile, which meant that most VCs, whether they're in the US, Europe, or China, have been focused predominantly on funding those technologies. Now, I'm not going to talk about those. Certainly my view is that the next 10 to 15 years, a lot of our biggest problems need to be solved with really fundamental new technologies, whether it's the climate crisis, whether it's the increase of geopolitical tension and the need for new defense technologies, or whether it's the need to reshore a lot of our advanced manufacturing and supply chains to be local. But we need, you know, novel energy solutions. We need new robotics for defense, et cetera, et cetera. So we have seen things pick up across the general investment landscape, I would say. I think we're starting to get to a point now where there are enough notable successes within the European landscape that people are finding comfort, not only in terms of the investor side, but also the founder side. You know, it's really important for founders to have mentors, qualified capital, people that can help them through all the stages of the scaling journey, but also that they have to have recognition of some role models. You know, this week in the UK, Wave, which is an autonomous vehicle company, raised $1 billion funding round, the biggest AI funding round in Europe. But we also have other successes, AutoStore, Exotech, the list goes on. So we're just about getting to that point where there's a combination of a really intriguing problem set, largely driven by new technologies and macro, more role models, and an increasing number of founders and talent wanting to build these companies.
Yes.
Naturally, that's pulling more capital into these market, and
Yes.
more VCs are looking to invest. So it's a good time to be starting a company. I don't know if it's the best time, but it's certainly probably, if you're building in deep tech, it's a better time now than it has been in the last 10 or 15 years in Europe, undoubtedly.
One of my portfolio founders, like Chris Hurt of First Space, had like an email to me this week where he said something which I really liked. If the friends around you and like peers around you actually build huge companies, you believe you can do it as well. And we keep underestimating this, and I felt this very much like living in San Francisco. Like if people around you build huge companies, and it's like people like you start
for sure.
believing
And maybe on that, for anyone on the call that's been through YC, you can maybe attest to this. YC obviously give amazing advice, and the network is incredible. But a key function of YC is every week you have a dinner, which is a very big dinner, but with a hugely successful scaled founder. You're in the room with that person. And really what that does is it humanizes them. They're no longer this role model that you see on Time magazine. There's someone that you're having dinner with and speaking with and asking for advice. So I think that's a really important function, and we're getting to that point in Europe as well. More deep tech angels who are willing to support and help the new generation of founders build new companies.
Let's continue our pitch back karaoke. So exits, ecosystem sooner or later lives off exits. This is something where we're not yet that strong, I would say. You're the expert actually, but why am I talking? Like, what's your POV?
Agreed. We need more exits. I think the exit landscape in Europe has been difficult. I think there's probably two things here. I think one, the public markets are difficult. So, historically, or at least pre-Brexit, the London Stock Exchange was the predominant or the largest exchange in Europe. Because of Brexit and a whole bunch of other reasons, that has become less attractive. But second to that, there's also, to take your company public, you also need to have really good analyst coverage within local markets. So that means public investors who cover your stock and write about you. And we don't really have that yet in Europe. It's still a bit too immature. A lot of those either investment banks or effectively buy-side brokers are a bit too averse to tech. We haven't had enough public IPOs for them to get real comfort. So that's problem number one. I think problem number two is because we're a bit less mature in terms of the technology landscape, really up until the last kind of economic cycle in the last 10 years, we haven't had these huge outcomes. We haven't had an ARM be a $50 billion company or a Revolut be a $40 billion company, etc. So what that has meant is that a lot of people that are within these companies have not seen these sort of late stage markets and have not really been able to best guide companies around an exit. So I think that will come in the next 2 or 3 years. We have a really, really strong pipeline of companies in Europe that are ready to go public, not only in deep tech, but some of which I've mentioned to you as well, whether it's Revolut or Solonis.
There's a few on this page. My favorite one is actually DeepMind because it got acquired by Google. People keep forgetting that this is actually like they're around the corner. They're like in the UK.
Yeah. So DeepMind's a great example. That was acquired, I believe, in 2016 for approximately $600 million by Google. It's worth saying, DeepMind at the time was, and still is to a large extent, a research laboratory. So they do cutting edge research at the intersection of AI and science. Back in 2016, at least, that was not a I guess in the classical way, a commercially viable business. They didn't have a core product that was generating tons of free cash flow. So maybe that was at the time maybe the best path for them. I think if we were to rerun that simulation, and if we all pretend that the AI market is less mature than it is today, but the funding market is more mature, and DeepMind was at that point today, I would hope that there would be more late stage capital, and I believe that there would be Series B, C, D capital to continue to sustain that company, to be much larger than when it was acquired by Google back then. So, I think DeepMind in many ways is kind of the very typical example that people mention in regards to early exits in Europe. But I think that will change in the next cycle.
I think so too. Also, like an interesting aspect here is a lot of these things, for example, like Mistral and a few others, actually came out of the fact that American companies had subsidiaries dependants, like in Europe for specific projects. So for example, like the Airbnb data team, and then afterwards like Meta and so on and so on. Like there's like a whole history very frequently how these research hubs work together with San Francisco. And a lot of the innovation was actually done across the whole company internationally.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. There's a lot of big engineering hubs for all of the FAANG companies, or most of the FAANG companies in Europe, in Zurich, in London, in Paris. And if you trace sort of the lineage of a lot of deep tech companies, there will be people who are building in AI or computer vision that came directly out of those.
I actually had like a bunch more, like I cut the list off here. There's a few like new ones as well. One, my favorite, personally, my favorite is actually Hugging Face, because everybody keeps forgetting about them, like that they're actually European. We like know Mistral and everything and like a bunch of others, but like Hugging Face seems to always be forgotten. Cool, let's jump like quickly further, okay? So what's the actual issue?
Maybe just go back to the sort of maybe one example of Wave. I think this is topical. So, and maybe this is a good example. Wave started out in 2017 out of Cambridge University. When they raised their first round of funding back then, a lot of the local VCs tried to convince them to just be a software company and sell that software to existing automakers, which they didn't want to do. And they effectively back then pioneered a method which was back then a complete narrative violation in terms of how you train autonomous vehicles. So they have always done end-to-end robotics when the market, and I'm talking about Tesla and Waymo and Cruise and Voyage and everyone else, was effectively doing hard code-based rules. So sort of classical robot learning where you effectively code all of the edge cases and train them and sit. Wave's approach effectively ended up winning out. And how that has impacted the global robotics scene really in the last year is even companies like Tesla have now changed their approach to robotics. So before they were doing hand-coded, now they do end-to-end robotics, same as Wave, and largely derived off some of the success that they had. So, I was listening to a podcast, a very famous US podcast recently, and they were talking about autonomous vehicles and Tesla and Cruise and Waymo, and there was no mention of Wave whatsoever.
Because we're not part of that narrative usually, and that's like our biggest weakness. We're not good storytellers.
It wasn't even an appendix to the conversation.
Yeah.
And it should have been. It should have been core to what was discussed in that, because the discussion was around Tesla's ability to use end-to-end robotics to do things like robo-taxis with their existing vehicle fleet, humanoid robots, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we've got to remind ourselves, there are these narrative violations and these instances where Europe is really a pioneer and a leader in specific spaces.
Yes.
But, as is being evidenced by this discussion, we need to all get more confident talking about.
One aspect that's fascinating to me is like Europe has a lot of problems, like we will like address a few like afterwards, but we keep forgetting that the US has no incentive to storytell for us. There's no reason whatsoever, to like promote our companies. we need to get comfortable with actually promoting European excellence as much. And I know it's like a European thing. It's like not to brag, like you expect everybody else to brag about you, you know, but that's a mind change we have to do. Like we have to be comfortable actually bragging about success. And the number two is we actually have to think of all of this as European. Because even with these lists, when I published them, when I published like the list about universities, people were mentioning, yeah, but like many of them are UK and not mainland Europe. And I'm like, who cares? You know, yes, but this is a French success, not a European success. Like, who cares? Like, all of that is Europe. You know what I mean? And like that's something we need to be comfortable in. Let's jump into one thing that Adrian Killian in the comments sent, which I really like, is Europe, like based on everything you said so far, doesn't have an innovation problem. It has a capturing problem. Like we are not good in capturing the outcome of that research. That's at least my understanding currently.
Yes.
What's your take on that?
For sure. And I think there's a bunch of issues around this. You know, this is the predominant issue. And by the way, we should maybe shout out to Deal Room and Lakestar who put this and a few of the other graphs together. Just because this is a perfect illustration of that. So to your point, we do not have a research problem. We do not have a talent problem. So why are we not getting the results at the end? Now, whilst I think this graph simplifies it and, you know, normalizes it, which is very helpful to see, I think there's a few things that feed into this. So one, and I think we have spoken about this on the call, one, which is, you know, a fragmentation issue. So we have some talent clusters, but there's still too many. You know, ETH Zurich is probably over 1,000 kilometers away from Imperial and Oxford and Cambridge, and probably 500 kilometers away from TU Delft. I'm making it up, but you know, there are really strong cores, but they're far away from each other, and they're in different countries, and people speak different languages. So number one. I think number two, we have to get people comfortable with taking some of that research and really feeling that there is a path for them to turn that research into something beyond that, into a company, into a product, into whatever they please. I think at the moment that has been lacking fairly strongly. And I think that's for a few different reasons. One, if you look at the spin out landscape in Europe. So what spin outs mean is you are within an academic setting and you want to take that research and turn it into a company. You typically have to go through technology transfer offices at universities. And at the moment in Europe, that is a complete mess.
Yes.
So places like TU Delft, for example, they will say to you, hey, we're super happy for you to do that, but we are going to take 30% of your company for you to do that.
Yes. And also like the fact that there's like a few universities who are like kind of like really good in this, but like just the fact that this is like not European wide understood, that is like an absolute no-go, and like instantly breaking any kind of like startup aspiration of that region is like horrible.
For sure. And there's few issues, you know, one, it's expensive in often cases, 10, 20, 30, 40% equity sometimes people want, or similar ratios in terms of profit share, which is, you know, ridiculous given sometimes these companies don't make profit for 10 plus years. Number two, even if you get through that, it's just incredibly painful. So I've heard there's a funny story out of Oxford University of one of the academics there. During the COVID pandemic, he had effectively antibacterial paint that you could put onto masks. But it took him so much time to go through the technology transfer office that by the time he actually went through it, the pandemic was over.
Yes. So here you hear it first. Universities can kill people, and anybody who studied might agree with you. Let's quickly jump further. What I want to do in the next phase is like talk a little bit of friction. Okay. Before I do that, what's your POV on this? And then what I do is like you go off. and then I get like another person on, and I talk with him about mainly about the topic of friction. But like, what's your POV on the whole friction and fragmentation outside of university?
So um, I think there's a few things. Maybe to start kind of more on the positive side. There's definitely some emerging hubs in Europe. Munich is really good at aerospace and manufacturing. We have great companies like Quantum Systems, ISA Aerospace, really good technical universities.
And computer
Germany
vision.
has and computer vision Germany has a really high percentage of automated robotics, so much higher than in the US. And we adopt more automated robotics on a yearly basis than the US. Beyond that, Nordics as well are really good climate. And I often joke that the Nordics is kind of the Silicon Valley of net zero. But if you look at the top 5 global countries for the net zero transition, they are all in the Nordics. And largely that has been because of a lot of government support, but a culture of building new technologies and adopting new technologies in a concentrated manner. So, there are positives. What I would like to see is probably a few things for Europe as a whole to maybe figure out which hubs to really double down into instead of spreading, robotics people from London and Zurich and Munich. Just figuring out how we can get that talent in one place and give them the incentives to do so. So really building these networks and clusters of talent. I think maybe you haven't mentioned this, but I think is really important. Government's role and corporations should be buyers of first resort. So I'm not talking about government subsidies. What I'm talking about that the US does very well, the US Department of Energy, for example, will say to a startup, hey, if you can get to X amount of megawatts in your small nuclear reactor or whatever it is, we will effectively buy 20, 30, $40 million worth of product from you if you can get it to this point. And that function is really important because often these companies get to a point where they go from small scale or lab scale to commercial scale, which is really hard. To get to commercial scale, you might have to build a factory, but you can't afford to build a factory if you haven't sold any products. So financing is really important. And I think there's room for government reform on that. So, I think there's a few things there.
I bet that for example, like in America, like also like the DoD does this, and I bet we have similar solutions in Europe with the ESA and so on and so on. I bet we have them, one thing that would be important here is just to get this like more standardized and like just more top of mind, so that like early founders like in the early 20s in Europe actually see a very, very clear path to do crazy projects like robotics, like space tech, like defense tech, like manufacturing. They need to see like, here is a clear roadmap, and at this point, if you get to this point, it's possible for you to get into the first tiers of government contracts, which is in the US not even a crazy thing to say. Like that's very, very common there, and even like with non-US companies, oddly enough.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, maybe to summarize my thoughts on fixing this, I think we need to unlock capital. So both from the investor side at all stages, which I think is coming, which I discussed before, the government side as well as buyer of first resort. And I think, we really need to have a coordinated motion where we concentrate on specific technologies and talent clusters.
What's your take? Like, and then I'll leave you be. By the way, just that everybody knows, okay, Sam has his first weekend off since like, I don't know, 9 months, 10 months, you told me, or something like this. He promised to his wife that he will absolutely not work, neither today, tomorrow, or on Sunday. Okay, he absolutely promised this. And I asked him if he joins, and he said yes. Okay, so I will leave you be afterwards, and I owe your wife like a flowers as I promised.
Glad we're doing this.
Yeah. So my last question, I'll leave you be. Okay. We have London with AI. We have Paris with AI. We have Munich with robotics, space, potentially computer vision, and maybe a few other things. We have Zurich with like literally anything you could think of, and we have the Nordics with climate. Do you currently see any other hubs evolving, or do you even see like segmentation within those, to be fair, very, very large fields?
Yeah, I mean, Cambridge has always been very strong at bio. I think Berlin, there's quite a lot of climate and energy things happening. TU Delft, very good at anything that involves physics. So there's a few other places, but I think in terms of sort of what are the big technologies that are likely to be impactful over the next 10 to 15 years, AI, robotics, in my view at least, as well as along with sort of new energy and climate are likely to be the biggest.
Yes, in chat, Niels Westgard mentioned Stockholm as like a potential gaming industry hub, which I think is interesting because the Nordics used to own mobile gamings until they lost it to, I think, Turkey and a few others, I would say, you know, so it would be actually interesting. Cool. What's your POV on defense tech in Europe? That's like a little bit of like a soft topic, you know, like America right now with American dynamism, and you have like a huge USA flag. You get like a mullet, you know, you get a flag, you scream, and all of a sudden you can have a drone startup like popping out on left and right from you. What's the POV of this with defense tech in Europe as like European, like has a different POV on military in general? Like, what's your POV on this? What do you think would happen?
Yeah, so I think I mean this is another good example. You know, this kind of El Segundo, which for those who don't know is kind of an emerging hard tech hub. So hardware companies in Los Angeles. It's a specific area in Los Angeles that has a lot of historical aerospace talent, mechanical engineering talent from a lot of the defense primes and aerospace companies, and they've sort of reinvigorated it as you know a new place to build. And they have mainly done that to their credit, you know, with a lot of memes and a lot of tweeting and making a lot of noise and building lots of really cool stuff to be frank, you know. I'm not trying to discredit them at all. And they've done an amazing job. What's interesting is they did a defense tech hackathon maybe 2 months ago. And we, you know, myself and a few other people, we organized and co-sponsored one which was about 3 weeks ago in London. And we had more people join and attend. Not by much, by maybe 50. I think in the US they had 250. We had 300, just over 300. But, you know, it went to show everyone that the scene in terms of talent that want to build these early stage companies is as strong here as it is over there. And again, you know, like what are the core competencies that you need to build these types of companies?
You know what's
AI.
kind of like, no offense, pissing me off. I heard about the Segundo meetup, and I heard what a success it was. To this moment, I have not known about that. We need to get so much better in storytelling in Europe. You know, like I think we need to send half of the Europeans to America and just like learn to chant like USA like loudly for like hours, and then like just come back to Europe and do the same here. You know, like why the hell? Like how do I not know about this? You know what I mean?
Yeah. But I was going to say, you know, the reason I think it was a success is the core competencies of building those types of companies. We have those engineers. We have electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, people in AI, computer vision, and we're really good at all of those. So it was great to see, you know, hundreds of young builders building companies and kind of hacking away at it, and it really gave me sort of positive hope that there's sort of a new generation that want to build these companies.
Awesome. Sam, highly appreciate for you joining. Say 5,000 times thanks to your wife and like for her understanding. And yeah, I would love to like, because I don't know much about deep tech and I don't want to pretend I do, you know. I would love to like keep working on this and like find ways how we can like promote European deep tech a little bit more. And I think the community is very eager to help here. So yeah, highly appreciate your help.
All right, Andreas, thanks for hosting. All right, guys.
Bye-bye.
See you later. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
Cool. Give me 1 second just to figure out how technology works. Perfect. Okay. Sweet. So one more thing, and then I'm back to how do I hide myself? I cannot. Okay. So how do we fix this? There were like a lot of really, really good points. My main message I want to get across in this stream today, the problem we have, it's not about talent, it's not about innovation, it's not about ambition, okay? And it's definitely not about mentality. All of this come out of a system, best case. If you assume that they are true, let's say Europeans have a certain mentality, whatever. All of that comes out of a system, and that system comes out of like fragmentation. It comes out of the fact that if I start a company in the US and I fail, I have the same downside as in Europe. But if I win, I have a way bigger upside. Okay. And not only is like it's way bigger to the consumer size, it's also like the chance that it becomes there way higher to the speed early on, because I have international investors, I have international customers, all this stuff like creates acceleration that I need early on to succeed. This creates a mentality where you see people winning that focus on risk awareness. Okay. In my opinion, at least. But nowadays, we're like a new generation. Like now you sell online. You sell to customers internationally from day one. Like most people in the audience, most people in chat most likely have an app fully online. They don't go to somebody knocking on the door to sell it. They don't post in a local newspaper for like a little classified ad. They just promote online into their niche. So like this aspect becomes less and less important. So what still stays is the friction early on that a lot of founders experience. And that's something I want to talk today. And I'm not talking about like unifying the consumer market. This is something that is a little bit out of scope for this specific project. Okay. We will keep it in the backlog. We will keep it in the icebox, and we will take it from there as soon as we have time. But this is not the project for this now. Okay. We can maybe fix investments, and that's something I want to like focus on. Okay. To give you context and why I think this is important. If you, as an American, want to invest, or like even as a non-American, want to invest in a company in the US, you find a great founder, no matter where they're based in the US, they send you an email with an hopefully Documenso link or like maybe DocuSign link. There's a safe in it, you click a button and you're done. And that's it. And I have done this multiple times. You don't need any lawyers. The only thing you do is you check in the top. If it says this is an official safe, you find the actual document on this website. Any changes in this file don't affect anything. The only thing to be changed is like the valuation and such. So you instantly know this is a standard document. You don't have to check it. You don't have to send it to a lawyer. You don't have to like look for anything. It's a safe in a Delaware ink. You have done this. You know how this works. And even if you haven't done this, other people figured out what is the best possible standard. And you just press a freaking button and you're done. And you maybe wire some money, obviously. But that's the amount of stuff you have to do in the US, okay? Europe is a little bit different, okay? In Europe, usually what you need to do as a first step is you need to, in many countries, and this depends on the country, okay? You need to find a notary who's actually willing to work, which is by itself already really, really hard, you know? Like you basically need to call them, beg them, and hope they have even a like willingness to work. You need to find somebody who's willing to give you their firstborn and sacrifice them on an altar. And this is a fact. This depends on the country. I'm not naming specific countries now, but this is a fact, okay? You need to file at least 25 different documents in person on your knees. And every German here in the audience can prove that this is like, I've confirmed this is true. And then you need to slaughter, and this again depends on the country. This is not for all of the countries. I'm not saying this is like default across Europe, okay? Some of them have it, okay? You need to slaughter a goat within 25 kilometers between a close relative of your family. And that can be like a third cousin or something like that, okay? They're a little bit like loose on that part, but it needs to be a goat, male goat, that's very important, 25 kilometers close to a local cousin or like a local family member. Then you need to get a random questionnaire, fill out of that, you know, for random tax authorities and your notaries and like 500 other documents. And then there's like some other real weird gotcha. There's some other random KYC you have never seen before, and so on and so on. And then in some countries, again, it depends. You need to sacrifice somebody's second-born child to get all of this within time. And time might mean like 6 months, okay? There's a lot of other random steps we can't get into now, you know? But like this is like on a whole, if you look at Europe, this is the kind of stuff you would need to expect as a European investor or an investor who wants to invest in Europe, okay? quite frankly, investing in Europe is a shit show. And I say this as somebody who tries everything I can to avoid investing in European entities unless they're like very, 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 very specific entities. And trust me, GmbH is not one of them. Okay. And now I actually, because I don't want to like ramp on this all the time, I want to get somebody else here. And I want to like get somebody else who is an actual expert, somebody who has professional investing experience. So like the big difference here is I am investing. Okay. The person I want to get on is an actual investor, big difference, okay, who has done this for more than a decade and all across Europe, okay? So let's get the expert on, and I hope he's like still awake because we're a little bit over timing. Jens, let me quickly see. Praying. Okay, let's try. Jens, do you hear me? Okay, this actually works. Jens, can you try quickly say something? I want to like double check if the audio works.
Hi, Andreas.
Perfect. That's amazing.
Can you actually see me? I'm not quite sure I can see myself.
Yes, we see you perfect. You look handsome as always. Thanks so much for joining. Can you quickly tell who you are and what's your experience with investing globally and also like in Europe?
Sure. So I'm Jens. I live in Berlin. I run a super angel fund in Berlin called AngelInvest, where we make about an investment a week in European technology companies. So we've now invested in well over 100 companies. Before this, my background is I'm a natural scientist, then I became a founder. Now I'm an investor, and I run AngelInvest, and that's sort of the background.
Yes, somebody in the comments already mentioned you have a blue shirt on. That means you are like a professional investor, and the first button is open. And that means that you're like a very early stage investor, okay? One of the things I want to mention about Jens is he actually has good feedback from founders he invested in, which is surprisingly rare in Germany, which I don't want to get into now, you know? But yeah.
Okay, yeah. So the reason, Andreas, I've listened in what what Sam was saying, but basically I'm sitting in the garden, if you like, of a restaurant where I'm at dinner with my parents-in-law, and I'm dressed nicely, you see. So, and I stepped out to do this call because accelerating Europe is super important to me, and that's sort of one of the things that I'm doing right now.
You know what's funny? Like, who the hell does a stream on Friday evening? You know, like what the hell? Everybody I ask has like anniversary, you know, first time off ever, families in town. Finally can do. I had like somebody who couldn't come because it's like they're whatever. Like, don't want to get into this, but like Friday evening, you know, like people either have family or party, and there's no in between.
But look, it's actually a good filter to see who really cares. Huh?
Fair enough.
So you know, so that's sort of that.
Yeah. Cool. So we have Jens on, a real investor, very experienced in Europe. He doesn't have cash as a last name, as like what's right now mentioned in chat, you know, but like nobody's perfect. So let's get into this, okay? What I want to do with you, and again, we play pitch deck karaoke. You haven't seen the slides, you don't know, or maybe like you've seen like an early draft, but you don't know really what's coming, you know, but I want you to professionally react on everything you see and just make it up on the fly, okay?
Okay.
So first thing I want to do is a quiz, okay? And this is a quiz not only for you, this is also for chat, okay? These are legal European entities where investors are asked to invest in, or there are medical diseases, okay?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Okay? And
okay, so
yeah.
I go.
Chat,
let's
do the same. Like, if you can point out the medical diseases, like write them into the chat, okay?
I can see a few.
Which ones do you?
No, I need to say. No, I have to say I've got a background in biotechnology, so maybe I can get some of those. Some of those diseases. I think CJD is probably.
Let's start on the left side. Let's start on the left side.
Oh,
which
left
of
side.
these you know are European entities? 100% certain.
I'm not even sure I can see these.
It's very small for you, right? Like in your phone.
Yeah, no, it's on my phone. It's super small, and I'm half blind. The first one is definitely a company. The second one I can't read.
Okay.
CHF. That sounds like Swiss francs, so that's probably a currency, but so it's sort of that.
Chat,
POOD.
Let's ask the chat, like which one of these are, from your point of view, medical diseases, and which of these are actually legal entities. So we have somebody mentioning STI. Is STI on it? STI might be a medical disease and not an
disease. STI, that's a sexually transmitted no, whatever, it's STI, I don't know. But probably I would say CJD is probably a disease, but is it cross? I don't know. Then PID, that's one. And then I would say,
okay.
I don't know.
Let's do the first one. The first left side. Are there any where you're 100% sure they're medical diseases and not European entities?
I've got absolutely. BVBA is definitely an entity.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. AB is an entity. I know this one. EOOD, I know because it's funny to me that we have OOD and EOOD. We have both in Europe, you know. And I think CRT is one. I don't know the other ones. Okay, let's try. Ooh, yes, nice. Okay, so CHF is congestive heart failure. Okay, we should have known. And NGU is like non-John, whatever. I honestly didn't know that Greece entities are called EPE, and I lived in Europe for like, I don't know, like more than longer than I'd like to admit.
I mean, even our CFO wouldn't know because we've never invested in any of these. They would all have something sensible at the top, right? So, yeah.
So let's try this on the right side. And this is like why I get you on, and this is why I can only do this with friends, you know, because I make this kind of quizzes. On the right side, chat, what do you think are definitely medical diseases? So we know STI is a medical disease. What other out of this is like a medical disease? Where are you certain it's a medical disease?
Yeah.
Okay.
PID. I bet PID is a disease.
PID? Okay. iPad.
I don't.
So I know that DOO is like an entity because I know that OOD is an entity, and for some reason some countries write it the other way around. Okay. Where SRL is one, I think. PLC sounds like one. SRL is definitely one.
PLC is a British public listed company.
Yes, exactly. Let's see. Okay, let's see. 1 second. Drum roll. Frick yeah.
Jakob syndrome. Yeah,
yes.
That's what.
Pelvic inflammatory disease. Okay, yeah, we should have known that, obviously.
So on the right side, I was 3 out of 3. And on the left, I was 0 out of 2.
So what's the whole point of this? A part of like making sure that Jens has like afterwards a really funny YouTube clip where that he should never ever show to his LPs. Every European country, and we have like in the EU alone 27, which is way too many, thinks they want their own entity, and each of them has their own hiccup. Each of them has their own gotcha, their own ritual, their own bullshit, and half of them have some little thing, like little fine print that makes it impossible to invest, right? And I have mentioned here a few from like tweets, you know, like regarding, you mentioned to me, for example, Spain in the past as well. Like, what's your POV on Spain?
Yeah, it's funny. We invested in a Spanish company, and then the lawyers came and said, "Oh, you need to register in Spain for taxes." And I said, "Oh my God, what does that mean?" "Yeah, well, you need a tax number." And I said, "I don't want to pay taxes in Spain." And they said, "No, if you don't have a tax number, you cannot be entered into the system." So it's like, really? Okay, so there's a system, okay? And then both the investing entity and the director that signs on behalf of the entity need to have a personal tax number in Spain. So then I give money to these lawyers. They do something. I don't know what they do. Like a month later, I have these numbers, and then I can invest in this company. You know, and I think the will to want to invest in this company has to be relatively strong to actually go through this process.
And the funny thing is, like this kind of like back channel discussion. You know, like that investors have. Like we have this kind of discussion. No founder ever hears this. You know what I mean? Like. For example, Italy. I know Italy is one of your trigger topics. You know, like what's up with Italy?
So in Italy, I haven't invested in an Italian entity. I've invested in plenty of Italian founders, but never in an entity. So I don't even know what that is called. And the reason for that is when I was in Italy, I was in an extraordinarily influential family office there, or investment bank there, and family office, and they said to me that there is withholding tax on capital gains. When you invest in Italian entities. And I said, so really? Yeah, so when I invest with a fund, because it's transparent, so all of my investors would become tax liable in Italy. And I said, that's completely prohibitive. If that is true, and I have never bothered to check whether that's true, and I never had to.
And that's
but that's the point,
part,
right? I never really, I lost the will.
Yes.
I completely lost the will to even think about it. So I said, I will tell every single Italian company, put a proper company on top, so I don't have to think about whether this is true or not.
And this is like something that people underestimate here. It's not so much like we have like 500 other facts like this. Like Lithuania not having proper preferred shares is like a meme in the investor scene.
Yeah, we had to flip a company. We had to flip a company from there into another country, actually into the
you had
Netherlands.
Experience with this, nice.
Yeah. So we seed invested in a company in Lithuania. There was a Series A round. The A round investors wanted to have preference shares. That for some reason this was difficult, and I don't know. So they said we have to flip within Europe into another country, and then they landed on for whatever reason that I don't know. But then we had to do a flip. It took months.
This is ridiculous.
And I don't know how much money to do. It was completely unnecessary.
For people in the chat who don't know what that means, so preferred shares are essentially there for one simple reason. Imagine you have a company. I agree to invest $1 million, and I get 10% of this company. Okay. Next day, legally speaking, you would be allowed to just close the company, take 90% of that 1 million, and I get back 10%. Okay, that would be completely legal unless I have a specific class of shares that's called preference and so on and so on, where I have the right to first get back my own money and a few other special rights. Okay. Apparently, Lithuania has already fixed that. I don't know. I don't care to check. And I'm not going to pay some random Lithuanian lawyer I've never worked with ridiculous amounts of money to figure out if this is true. You know, and let's talk about another topic, something that's a bit closer to our both hearts, or at least your heart. I was Austrian, I barely care. German GmbH, you know. What's your experience with German GmbH?
Well, there are two that I think we discussed. One is obviously you need a notary who registers everybody, and then when you have foreign investor, it needs to be every signature that they do needs to be notarized and then apostilled. Many people don't even know what that is. I've just had an investor refuse to go through that process after they signed a convertible note agreement, so we can't convert them into A because they refused to go to the notary. Literally like 2 weeks ago. And then the other problem that there is, because in Germany, this is even more of a problem in Austria, actually.
Oh no. We agreed beforehand that we only make fun of Germany and not Austria.
It's
go.
Minor degrees of difference. But one of the problems is that when you have, in the US, you have founder vesting. So if a founder leaves early, they have to give back a portion of their shares to the other shareholders because they haven't done the work. And in Germany, and this giving back of the shares, which is perfectly fine. Let's just say you commit to working for 4 or 5 years, and then you leave after 1 year or 1.5 years because you've got other things to do, right? If you keep all of your shares, everybody else has to work for you for free. And that's just not fair. So therefore, there's always this agreement. You have to give back a portion of your shares, and that's typically proportional. Now, in Germany or Austria and Switzerland and other countries, that you can't just take away shares from people. You have to buy them out. And the buying out happens at the share price of the last round or thereabouts. So if you've raised whatever at 40 million pre-money and you need to surrender 3/4 of your shares, those can be worth $10 million. But the company is obviously not worth 10 million. I mean, the share is not worth it. And then it destroys companies. So this is basically a huge problem.
We had back in the days, in my case means like, 15 years or something. We tried to do founder vesting with an Austrian GmbH, and we had multiple, almost like paradox letters we had to hide, all pre-signed that officially don't exist and are only used if we need them. At that moment they exist, but they cannot exist before due to tax reasons, but like the moment we have to use them, they exist unless the other person says that they are fake or whatever. Like it was a complete hell. And if they would say you're fake, there's another letter that cannot exist until then, which you had to pull out. It was a complete shit show. Anyway, Let's move on. Let's move on. Okay. We can talk.
Yep.
This is like inside baseball. People talking about trauma. Okay. Welcome to RFC. Let's move on. Okay. Because I don't think that people come here for investor therapy.
Well, hearing that, no, for sure not. We want to talk about the future. We're here to build the future.
You complained about notaries. I found out that notaries originally in the Middle Ages were used after a wedding to confirm that actually the marriage was consumed. So like there was a person standing in your bedroom taking notes, and then proving to like the king and like everybody else that this marriage was consumed. So one thing I can say, in Europe, we're a little bit better than the Middle Ages, a tiny bit,
But I mean, if you think about, let's just say 150 years ago, when you started to have things like registers for companies or for property and things like that. But the majority of the population was illiterate. So then you had a notary, and that notary would read out every word in a contract to you as the illiterate person.
Yes.
And
anybody
make sure
who has
that
ever been to this kind of thing in Germany is like right now triggering,
Yes.
like a full group of people paying a person to read out a letter that they wrote.
Yes. Yes. And
for like half an hour.
in an equity, dude, in an equity transaction, it's 10 hours, and nobody goes. You sit there with a lawyer who's been paid to sit there, who's been appointed by dozens of people,
Yes.
and they literally read out the contract. It takes 10 hours, and it's incredible how fast notaries can read. But it's 150 years ago. This was a highly sensible, this was a fantastic idea. Yeah.
We had
but
back
that is not now.
Dude, in my the GmbH I mentioned before, we wanted to make everything startup ready, and we tried everything as founders to make it like big investor ready. Okay. We had the whole thing in German and English, and I think we were like one of the first in Austria trying to do that. There was like one notary at that time doing it, was like a dude above 60, 70, I swear to God, was sitting next to this person. And to anybody who complains about my accent, okay? I didn't know if this person is reading the German or English part at several times of the thing, because they were basically just talking German while pronouncing English words. Anyway, the first thing that happened when we actually got big dog investors, international ones, is they asked us to like throw the whole thing away and like open up a UK limited, because they cannot they won't pay lawyers to figure out all the little details here.
That is not, that makes total sense.
Okay. So to get back to the story here, okay? It's not about the individual that like a GmbH is horrible, or like an OOD, or like an STI is horrible, or all of the others, It's about the fact that each of them is slightly horrible in a different way. This is the one thing that's really the problem in Europe. Like, I'm not going to pay hundreds of lawyers to figure out all the details and stay up to date. I've never worked with them. You're not going to do this. Nobody's doing this centralized. And even if we would, some of the legal systems are so fundamentally wrong for investing. You can't even you can pay lawyers as much as you want. You can fix that,
That's right.
We won't learn the nuances because we can't. And that's why both of us either focus only on certain legal entities or legal regions, The problem is most founders from Poland, Lithuania, or wherever, they don't know that usually when they start out. This is not something they should care about,
Yes.
But they might run into this problem. The thing is, if we can't be bothered, how do we expect Americans to do that? There's no freaking way that an American is being like, let me learn about Spanish wealth tax and what that actually could mean to me potentially,
Yes.
No freaking way. People need standards. If you complain about European companies and startups not having enough funding, that's one of the reasons. It's not the only reasons, but that's like one of the big obvious reasons, at least to me. It's just pain in the ass in Europe to invest pan-European unless the founders already have done it multiple times and know this kind of gotchas.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, there are, before we, not sure what the next slide will say, but there are I think there are two broad concepts, in case any politician ever hears this. Yeah. There are two things that are really worth understanding. The first one is that the money that society makes from a startup happens very quickly. And what happens is that, let's just say we invest €1 billion, for example, into German startups. Yeah. So, and this €1 billion is spent within a year. Then of this money, 70 to 80% of that will go on salaries. which are taxed, and then there's other tax. So basically, of the billion, 500 million ends up as tax revenue in the coffers of the state right away.
Yes.
Like immediately. And then you have these things called spillover effects, because these things exist, they buy more stuff, and people buy more stuff, blah, 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 blah. All of that is taxed. And effectively, if you spend $1 billion on salaries, $1 billion ends up in state taxes immediately. So compare that to, say, so then you invest $1 billion, and then 10 years later, this billion turns into $3 billion. And then you have capital gains tax on that. That is a fraction of that money. It is completely irrelevant for a state.
Yes.
Capital gains tax is so far in the future. It's at least 2 election cycles away.
Yes.
And
also
so
like
much,
if too many exits are our problem, we will fix this problem, you know?
So all you need to do, politicians, is maximize the amount of venture money that goes into your country, because if you do that, the money will just gush into your coffers.
So you will be
whether
happy
we
to
as
hear,
investors want to or not.
Yes, you will be happy to hear that a lot of politicians are watching my stream regularly. Okay, I'm very, very famous in Brussels. It's like one of those things nobody's allowed to miss. Yeah.
Hey man, we don't know what will happen here, but basically it's worth saying that, right? Number one. And number two, the problem in Europe is not specificity, it's diversity. There are so many of these different things, and they all work differently. The problem is not any specific type or dealing with that. The problem is dealing with all of them together.
Yes.
That is actually undoable.
Yes.
And that is the problem.
Yes.
Yeah. So we find it very hard to make politicians or countries money, because there's so much diversity.
Also,
that is the problem.
No, I fully agree. Let's move on. I agree with all of this. One thing I want to get here, that this is too, let's be kind, middle-aged man, you know, investors talking about like very first world problems about like, oh my God, I have to pay a lawyer to figure this out. Oh, I can't be bothered. You know, this is not an investor problem, as much as this sounds like an investor problem. There is a lot of regional investors in every country in Europe whose sole reason that they are allowed to exist is the fact that all of this complexity ensures that Americans, you, me, international investors won't look at companies in that region early enough, you know, because why bother? Kind of, you know, there's like dozens of little ripple effects. Like you have weird little local investors screwing you over. That's one of the reasons, you know, investors, US investors don't take you serious and like tell you to move to the States or don't bother them. That's one of the reasons. You're frustrated that fundraising is slow, shitty, and like very cumbersome. That's one of the reasons, you know, you're complaining about the fact that state grants are a normal thing in Europe, you know, like, hey, we are like applying for this state grant. And I literally, I get like cold sweat when I hear this every time, you know what I mean? Because I did state funds, you know, I had like people employed in my team whose only job was to build the crap that we promised to them. We didn't need that. We just needed the freaking money, you know what I mean? So I had like 2 people working on a random project telling them, guys, great work. Just know that we afterwards throw it away, you know, only to get the stupid state grant. And this is a complete distraction. And in Europe, this is normal. Okay. Sorry, this was my rant. I'm good again. I'm good again. Okay, let's talk about solutions.
Solution.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
By the way, like a good comment in the chat right now by Adrian Killian is the problem with state grants is not only that they create a lot of overhead, you know, they also change how you think about your own company, the priorities early on, you know, and they make everything worse because you don't look for local experts in your industry as angel investors. You look at like whatever your regional board of funding wants you to do, you know, and if they currently have an incentive around whatever kind of priority, you try to incorporate this into your thing, no matter if your customers need it or not. And that's the actual toxic part about state grants in many cases. Okay, I'm back to Austrian renting. I'm very sorry. Let's go into solutions, okay? And this is something where I would like to get your POV on as well, okay? Because I think we can fix this, okay? I think this is
I agree.
fixable, okay?
Yes.
And it can't honestly be that hard because come
No, it
on,
isn't.
like who hasn't fixed Europe in a weekend or like at least we have, like let's take the summer, okay? It's doable, okay? I think that this can be fixed on a European level. And the reason why I think the EU Act is a good name is because Europe, the European Union, as many in the audience know, is a huge part of Europe. And if we fix this in the EU, we have the majority of problems fixed, you know? And this is not about that like EU Act not being about UK or Switzerland or Norway or like the 50 other like states, like the 10 other states we have. All of them are important to Europe. You cannot make Europe succeed without them. You cannot make the European Union succeed without them, you know? But we have a chance to at least fix this within the European Union to some extent. And that's my POV. And if we do this, all of Europe benefits. What's your POV on this?
Yeah, I think we talked about this. I think it's doable. It's right now, technically, it's absolutely possible. And the beauty is, as a first, I think there are multiple steps in this journey, but the first step doesn't even involve politicians, or the first few steps.
No spoilers, no spoilers. We get to this in a second.
No spoilers. I'm just saying, I'm super excited. That's why I'm sitting here. That's why I'm doing this. I think this is, I said to you, this is one of the things that I would love to be involved with.
So we need a European Inc. on the long run. We need a standard European Union entity that everybody agrees on, that they want to invest in, that has like standard documents and everything else. And if people say this is too ambitious, I would like to remind everybody that we have the euro. We have a shared currency. I still know people who are sad that we lost the shilling. Nobody in chat even knows what shilling is because most of the audience is too young. You know what I mean? I don't know if even you know. Like I think you had the Deutsche Mark or something, you know? I
remember the mark for sure,
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't worry about it. You know, exactly. It's not something that's on my mind.
Not that much. But like we managed to change the currency. I think this is way more fundamentally ingrained in any aspect of culture, in any aspect of business and economy, you know what I mean, than any European entity ever could be. So I think it's possible. And the funny thing is whenever I say this, people are like, are you crazy? You know, like, why don't you do something simple, you know, like robotics, space missions or anything like that, you know, like let's do a mission to Mars. That's at least doable, you know, but like fixing or improving the European Union, like frack that. No way this is going to happen. One thing, did you hear about the SPE?
In what way? Oh, we talked about this. Yeah. I mean, I heard about that for sure.
This is one thing that most people don't know, which is kind of, to me, I have never heard about this beforehand, and I'm trying desperately to get to know the right people here. There has been an initiative to standardize European entities. It was called the SPE, and it's SPE because it's like the Society Europea is basically the big one, and then privatized like for the small ones. And this has been put into proposals and on so on like since 2008, and it was basically killed around 2011, and then like officially done at 2014. So we are not talking anything new here. This is like 15 years ago, even politicians already wanted to do this. You know what I mean? And back then it's slightly like it narrowly was like killed, among others, by the amazing insight of the CDU that it might be competitive with the GmbH, which I still think is freaking funny, you know? But yeah.
The notaries have a lot of power, Andreas. I'm telling you, they're very rich.
It's big notary coming again. Okay.
Oh, seriously? Do you know how rich they are?
Okay. One thing why I think this is important, and Jens, I do like 2 more slides like this, and then I let you go back to your family-in-law because it's like Friday evening, your families are here and everything. Okay, so I don't want to like take too much of your time. Why I think this is important, and I hope you agree with this, Jens. We have the founders who want to build robots. We have the research to do it. We have the founders who want to do space tech. We have all the crazy stuff. We have people who are ridiculously ambitious. I talked to European founders that said that like their long-term vision is that they want to do like a drug lab in space. And I was like, this is ridiculous. Also, VADR, so kind of like done in the US, you know, but we have the ambitious founders, but we kind of need is like we need to remove the friction, so like that all of these little things, these little gotchas, isn't the thing that we have running in here, right? So
For sure.
one thing I would love to get your POV on this is like the UK has like a very, very, oh, by the way, am I spoiling? Yeah, like, so the UK is actually quite far with this. Like the UK Limited is actually a very beneficial entity to a lot of like, for a lot of aspects, you know what I mean?
Yes.
I will spoiler this a bit now because I want to let you go afterwards, you know, and I don't want to like drag you like the whole presentation. But basically, the POV that I have is that it's possible to start already now without waiting for politicians by doing a construct around holding companies, which is very common with more established, experienced founders. They get like a US Inc. as a holding, a UK Delaware, a UK Limited, or like a Dutch company, for example, you know. Do you think the UK would be a good country as like the holdco country for this?
Well, if the UK was still within the European Union, the answer would be absolutely yes. No, for a whole host of reasons.
Yes.
Now they have obviously exited. So, and that is actually part of the problem. If that wasn't the case, the reality would be that a lot of European companies would probably have a UK Limited as a holding company. But I think what we need to move to is we need to have a European holding company. And I think, you know, it needs to satisfy a number of criteria. I don't know exactly what you're going to go through in the presentation later, but if there was a standardized entity that sits on top that you then put, and that the pure purpose of that would be to just function as a vehicle to be the investment vehicle. And then you have operating entities underneath, 1 or 2 or 3, or I don't know, where the work happens and the taxes are paid. Then I think you can do that already. And you can take, there are a number of candidates that you can take, that you can standardize and put on top. There are 2 or 3 that come to mind. And you can basically create a standardized way to make investments across every single European country, irrespective of what the operating entity would be underneath a holding company.
Yes, I agree.
And that could then be transitioned at some point by politicians into a more what do you want to call it, advanced structure or entity or something like that in 10, 20 years or something like that.
Yes.
Whatever it may be. But I think we can't wait for them. We need to just get going and basically do this without any political anything.
Yes. Okay. One thing that I think is important with all of this, no matter if we do it like through a holdco, we need like government changes or we need like European changes. I think it's very important to have like one centralized ask as a startup community. One of the big problems we have in Europe is we have roughly 5,800 regional startup associations, and each of them asks for 20 different things from their local region. And they have like all kinds of great ideas in it, you know, but I can't remember them. No, you can't remember them. You barely know them. I barely know them, you know. There's like just too many confused asks about like what would be the perfect scenario. We're not talking perfect scenario. We're not trying, as hard as this sounds like to everybody here, we're not trying to be the next San Francisco. You know, we're trying to make sure Europe has the potential, not, first of all, not to be compared to like top tier 2 or tier 3 cities in the US, you know, but more importantly, has the potential to create new hubs, you know, that are different to San Francisco, but like they're their own thing. And that's the goal. And to do this,
you could say enable diversity through a single standard.
Yes, exactly.
Or a single entity entity at the top. Lots of unlimited diversity underneath any country, any region, doesn't really matter because nobody really minds where it is. And everybody gets enabled. Nobody needs to change anything locally.
Yes. The important POV that I have is like, if we have a European Inc. holding, non-holding whatsoever, you know, if we have a European Inc. that works, we can discuss how stock options can work. It's still complex because that's have to be done for the management corp. You know, you can talk how investment documents can be standardized. You can build AngelList, you know, on top of it. You can do all kinds of things as you have now like a standard that you can productize. And on top of this product, you can build a platform. On top of this platform, you can build more. So there is like a whole opportunity space here from my point of view. And this is why I think it's important to start here. And not worry about like all the other great ideas that all of us have. We need like something specific, small, actionable that we can tell to politicians. Cool.
Absolutely.
I jump on because I know you have to leave. I'm so sorry. Like, you're way over time. So one thing I want to say, and I want to make sure that like Jens is here with me, so that he gets canceled as much as I do. Okay. When any politician in Europe says they want to promote European startups, but they're actually against standardized entities across Europe, they're effectively lying. There's no other way to put this. If you are for European for European startups, you need to be for European standards. You need to make it easy across Europe to invest. And they might be for different reasons, like not for it. They might want to promote their mini GmbH as like Germany used to do, or like their French entity or whatever, They might have like local reasons. They might have like elections coming up. They have like some other, like they have big notary like breathing down their back, I don't know. But essentially they're not for European startups. And this sounds like a little bit like dramatic or anything like that. It sounds like a little bit overblown, but this is, from my point of view, the fundamental truth. We cannot have local incentives, local politicians stand in the way of Europe as a whole, and especially not like European founders as a whole. And the SPE was killed like 14 years ago by local politicians and like a few other organizations,
That's correct.
This cannot happen, and any European politician who says that they are against anything like that, in my opinion, is just plain against European startups, period. They might be for random region of their authority startups, but like in reality, not even that, because they make it harder for them to get investment as well. You know what I mean? So we might get canceled over this, and I pulled you down here, so I'm very sorry. But do you agree with this or not? And I might, by the way, I will cut your answer if you say no, just saying, okay? So do you agree or not?
I totally agree.
Okay,
and
cool.
Let me just say this. It is actually, the way to look at it is that we, if we pull up all of us, everybody gets pulled up.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just the major regions and the major hubs and the initiatives. It's like everybody goes up.
Mm-hmm.
And that is really beautiful.
I agree.
Great to be here. Likewise. I need to go.
Jens, thanks so much. Say hi to your family and say sorry for pulling you out for that long. Thanks so much for your time, dude.
Thanks. See you, man. Bye-bye.
So I'm abusing all of the goodwill I have with friends, making sure they get canceled, making sure they like Jens tomorrow will get like a mail by one of his LPs and be like, so you didn't know what an SRL is, really? Or something like that. I'm pretty sure. I'm very sorry for that already. Okay, let's quickly continue and then wrap this up because I want to make sure I'm not like stretching too much of your time, folks. I kind of know what I want to do this summer, okay? And I don't think of this as like a company or something like that. Maybe you can do a company around this, maybe not. I think of this as like me having way too much ADHD and being like, hey, hyperfixation sounds like a fun thing. Let's try this, So I basically am just like, this is important. Let's do this. Let's figure something out, My goal is I have basically 3 projects for this summer, okay? Project number 1 is what I call Mad Hatter, okay? It's figuring out how can you streamline and simplify holdcos in Europe as much as possible. And like Jens got into this for a second, and I should have like made proper slides for this. I'm very sorry to Jens about this. Basically, the idea is you have your local entity, check STI or whatever it's called. You have your check STI, and above you have like a standard holdco that has standard documents for everybody. And what I want to figure out, and I want to like release a community white paper, open source white paper on this, is like how much of this can you standardize? How much of this can you make transparent in a way that founders can just take and run with it with absolutely no legal guarantee from my end, by the way. B, you can figure out all the little edge cases and like answer this to everybody, so that they roughly know what to get in. And C, do it in a way that governments can actually not be against it. So like holdcos traditionally are mainly used for tax evade, what's the term for it? Tax structuring, internationally. That's what like holding companies are usually used for, okay? I think there's ways to make it, and because they're used for that, most of the countries have like 500 little gotchas to make it really, really hard for you to have a holdco and like all this kind of stuff, okay? I want to figure out like how much can you strip this down, make it as bare bone as possible so that there is absolutely no downside to a local government to accept the management company for an holdco that sits somewhere else, okay? That's project number one. Project number two is what I call Frankenstein, okay? I want to talk to a bunch of the people, and I already have like tentative network to this, to people who did work on the SPE program, initiative, sorry, 14 years ago, 15 years ago, something like that, you know. I want to figure out like, why did it actually fail? What were the downsides? Was this actually a solution that could be viable today? Like, would this be a solution that would work for startups? Is this the, you know, the holy grail that we're looking for? If yes, is there other ways to make resurrect this? And like, honestly, I'm not the person to then resurrect it. Like, I'm no freaking way I'm like going into politics. No freaking way. Okay, I have better things. Like, no. I will, best case, I will write an AI agent who will, you know, go to become an MEP, like MEP AI or something like this. But I think it's worth figuring out if this could be at least a solution, you know. And now project number three, I want to basically find a rogue state, and I hope I wrote rogue and not rouge. I never know which one is which, but I think it's correct. I want to find a rogue state, a country who is okay in slightly changing their laws to making the holdco actually ideal for all the other countries, okay? So if you, and we have a lot of people in the chat right now, if one of you is by any chance running a country in Europe, okay, please reach out to me. I would like to talk to you. I'm not offering bribes. It's just like lols, memes, and everything else. But I want to figure out if there's a way to like slightly adjust so that the holdco setup is actually something other countries could appreciate instead of like fear it as like tax evasion, okay? So if you run a country in the Europe, please write in chat so that I might know about this. And if you don't, then I assume you want to keep it secret. That's fine too, by the way. So that's kind of my project for this summer. So why? Just to repeat, okay, you want robots, you want space tech, you want all of this. We need a holdco. And I understand if European regulatory mayhem is not particularly exciting for you. In that case, ad break. I have a recommendation for you. There's a sister group which has nothing to do with European regulation. It's called EuroArc, okay? They are hardcore technologists, the technology optimism and all this kind of stuff for Europe. They're doing meetups and so on and so on. Their next meetup is next week, May 16 in Bucharest, okay? If you're into robotics, if you're onto all of this and you can't be bothered figuring out legalities of holdcos or talking to MEPs and all this kind of stuff, I don't blame you. I get it. You know, go to them. They're freaking awesome, and it's a community worth supporting. And it's not the same EU Act because I want to fix the European Union because I have nothing better to do, and their EURAC very similar, not the same. Can happen. Anyway, let's wrap this up. Okay. How can you help? If by any chance you run a country, let me know. If you're a pan-European tax expert. Or legal experts, please ping me. People are not responding in the chat right now, so I assume you're not neither of those, but that's okay. If you are or you know somebody, please let me know. Honestly, I'm happy to have as many free calls as possible, okay? Because those people cost a lot of money. Number two, if you're good at video editing, shit posting, or anything like that, start promoting European startups. We have a lot of good tech out there. Make cool videos, cool memes, cool tweets about it. I would be also very interested in running a whole Twitter account for this. If somebody wants to like help me with this, please let me know. EAC is really, really good in hyping the shit out of the tech that their founders do. We should do the same in Europe, okay? Please DM me afterwards if you are good in this. I don't know how to shitpost. I'm not good at this crap, you know? And I'm not good at video editing. I barely make slides. This is the best of my UI design I can do. So, okay, please. Also, very important, if you know, and this is no joke, okay? This is no joke, this is for real. If you know who made this logo, okay? please let me know, or like tell them to reach out to me. It's not levels, it's not Peter. I asked him, he didn't design it. Somebody sent it to him. That person was okay with him using it. I want to make sure that this person is also okay with me using it. I love this logo. I want to use it for everything. Okay. And Peter did not design this, but yeah. Last one. If you are good with policy or writing in general, please reach out to me. I would like to keep the community better in the loop with all the programs that are projects that we're doing over the summer. And I have a bunch of people helping me with this. I'm not particularly good in writing. If I write stuff, it always sounds kind of like weird, very Germanic. Please reach out to me. I would love to just keep people in the loop. Okay. And the last one, is there a way to keep us better connected? I have a domain, which is EUAC, and I have a freaking website, okay? I'm doing the work, okay? There's a freaking website. All of that is ready. I just don't, just freaking name cheap is like cheaping on me. I will fix this over the weekend. So there is a website, but what is a good way to have the community in the loop? Is it like a newsletter? Is it a Discord, church bells, smoke signs? Like, what do you guys think is a good way? Please DM me after this stream because I want to wrap up. People want to leave. Please let me know what you think is a good approach to this. And also if you could help me with this. I think Discord could be actually gangster for this. I agree. If you're good with Discord, I am not. I'm like 40 something, I am not good with Discord. If you're good with Discord, please DM me afterwards. I think this kind of initiative needs a community hub. And I would love to set one up. So please DM me in Twitter afterwards. Anyway, next step, let's get to work. If you want to help, you can help. Please ping me afterwards on Twitter and DM me or anything, okay? We already have a person volunteering to help me with the Discord, which is amazing. Please, I'm going to call you Pizza now because the actual name doesn't come to mind. I literally had you on the stream. I'm so sorry. Please, Pizza. Jesus fucking Christ. I know how he looks, but I don't know his name right now. DM me afterwards. Let's get this done. Johnny just volunteered to help me with documentation, which is amazing. I highly appreciate. Let's set up a Discord. Let's distribute the work a little bit. I hope EUAC goes live today. I don't believe it. Namecheap doesn't like me, But yeah. If you want to DM me, you could email me, but honestly, the moment you send me an email, I treat it like work and I don't care. Just DM me on Twitter. DMs are open. I want to set a Discord. Maybe we do a newsletter. I don't know. I will definitely throw this up on YouTube afterwards, but let's go from there. Pizza, I will just call you Pizza now. Pizza said that it will do something. Johnny is already supporting. Meetup sounds interesting, actually. I would be open to it. Let's see. Okay. By the way, my DMs are full. Yes, my DMs are always freaking full. I'm used to it. Okay. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with like weird people in my DMs. If people want to, I always say I have at least 1 or 2 people in my DMs who stab me. I want to stab me. That's completely normal. Honestly, if you don't get weird people in your DMs, if you don't have people who potentially want to kill you, you don't have enough reach. That's unfortunately the truth. So we already have a Discord. Awesome. Amazing. Okay. The link is in the chat. We will afterwards stream this. Okay. We will afterwards share this, sorry. And we take it from there. Accountability, okay? Because talking is fun and cheap. In 2 weeks, I want to do a second stream. Full accountability, tell everybody what's the update on these specific initiatives, these specific projects, okay? This will be in 2 weeks on Friday, okay? Keep me accountable. I will try to get out of it, But keep me accountable. Next week, we will do a normal, quote unquote, RF. I think I wrote the link wrong. I'm sorry. We will do normal RFC. Is this the actual? I never used that service. I'm so sorry. Is this correct? The link? Jesus, I'm distracted. Okay, so next week we do a normal stream, classic one. We actually will next week only doing founder demos, nothing else. Okay, no content block before because it's hard to combine these two anyway. It's too much work and it's way too exhausting. next week, only founder demos. If you want to demo next week, submit to this form, okay? It's way easier for me this way than like getting those as DMs as well. Cool. I think that's about it. Let me double check. We get to work. Yeah, we discussed this. Before I stop, I want to give a quick shout out to 2 people, okay? Number 1, Peter. Let's close the DMs. Peter, I know he's watching, and he already retweeted it, and he mentioned that I look ripped, which I appreciate, but it's really not the kind of involvement I was expecting from him. Anyway, shout out to Peter. He kickstarted a lot of this, at least for me. I saw Dave's tweet, but Peter's tweet kind of like was like, he's actually fucking right. Let's do this. You know, I had this actually as one of my big goals for this year, since actually last year to be precise, to do something around the European Union, because this is like one of my big pet peeves, and like to create a little bit more excitement around Europe. I couldn't figure out a name. My working title was Euro as fuck. And everybody told me this way too aggressive, you know? So Peter coming up with the whole UX, sorry, love it, okay? You can buy the merch here on his website, you know, like this is a cool way to say thanks to him. Yeah, cool. So like big shout out to him. Second big shout out goes to Jovian. Because somebody in the chat, I think this is hilarious. Somebody in the chat just said that they want to help me. What quote? Let me see. What's the actual quote? They want to help me making the slides actually look good. Okay. So Jovian was kind enough to help me with slides. So actually, you're not even like dissing me that much. You're dissing him as well. Okay. Just to know like how mean you guys are. So anyway, I want to give a big shout out to him for helping me with this kind of stuff. I couldn't have made this presentation this time and like without him, because it was way too much content, and I have like at least one other full-time job, you know. So a big shout out to him. Cool. That's it for today. I would like to thank everybody. If you guys want to support and join this, okay, we will set up a Discord. We will share this afterwards. If you can help with content, if you can help with documentation, writing, all this kind of stuff, that would be great. And if you don't, that's completely cool. One thing that would be extremely awesome is if you see news about European startups that are kind of gangster, tweet about it. Okay? They are culturally too compromised to promote themselves. They're culturally compromised to brag. Okay? Do it for them. If they have a cool clip anywhere in a demo, take that clip, make it a freaking awesome video for Twitter, like make them go famous, okay? We have amazing research here. We have amazing talent here. We have more STEM engineers than America, okay? We are the biggest exporter of founders to the US of all the like regions in the world, you know? We have all of that. We are just incapable of like highlighting it. And number 2, our governments, unfortunately, are a little bit incapable of making it easy, okay? But we're getting there, okay? So promote the shit out of European startups. That's something you can help me. You can help everybody else. Thanks so much for your time, folks. This is it for today. Next week, we are live with only demos of amazing founders. Everything will be work in progress. Everything will be raw and early. There will be no pitches. There will be actual product demos of actual people and with their actual questions and problems, okay? Guys, I'm zooming out. Thanks so much for your time. And to close this up, we do one more. Yeah. Let me say yeah. Fuck yeah. Okay, guys, thanks so much for your time. See you online, offline, I don't freaking care. You won't see me on the beach, unfortunately. See you soon.